Okay, so I would like to call the meeting to order. And the first item is to consider a revision to the existing fence permit at the property located at 4917 Essex Avenue. Before we proceed, could the town manager please read the disclaimer?
Yes. Before we start, this is just a reminder to all residents and participants that this meeting is being recorded, and we'll post this recording on the town website. There will be a public comment period for the public hearing. Otherwise, the hearing is, this meeting is scheduled to be a council work session. So if anybody does have any questions at some point, ask that please hold your questions until you have been called on. You can use the raise hand feature to indicate that you would like to speak. And if you are speaking, please state your name and street that you live on for record keeping purposes. And then finally, if for whatever reason this meeting gets interrupted, we will immediately end the call and send out new instructions to restart the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We will now begin the hearing. Today is September 16, 2020. This is a hearing before the Town of Somerset Council for a revision to permit number 19-11-12-C to consider a revision to the proposed fence on the property. We ask that residents be limited to one comment each and that they be limited to 2 minutes at a time. The town manager will call on residents by listed name or the last 4 digits of the phone number if no name is provided. When you speak, please state your name and street before you make your comment. When your time is up, a buzzer will sound and you will be asked to please finish your thought. The hearing will observe the following order. First, the Somerset Town staff will present their findings and submit for the record a report on the application under consideration. Second, the applicant will present their application. Third, the Somerset Town Council will have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or staff relevant to the application at hand. 4, other interested parties will have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or present comments to the applicant. And if necessary, the applicant will then have the opportunity for rebuttal testimony, after which the public comment period of the hearing shall be completed and the record closed. Finally, the council will deliberate and discuss amongst themselves the merits of the case, the findings of fact, and conclusions. The council may make a motion on a permit decision. If any opposition is presented, the town attorney will be asked to write a decision, and a permit shall not be issued before the expiration of 30 days to allow time for an appeal. If no opposition is presented, the town manager will be asked to issue a permit. We will now begin the hearing with the presentation of the Somerset staff findings and reports. Is it Mr. Town Manager?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I included a summary of the application for the council. As the mayor stated, the applicant is seeking to revise their original permit, which the original permit included a 5-foot aluminum fence at the rear of the property that extended around the sides of the house. And the plans and the description of the revised fence are included in the packet that you all received. So this revised fence will be 6 feet or 72 inches. A new neighbor sheet is not required per our code, but the applicant has included emails from adjoining and abutting properties attesting they have been informed of the proposed change, and I believe they've even worked with some of the neighbors to accommodate some of their requests. The proposed fence will extend to 40 feet from the face of the curb on the sides of the house, which is in line with the neighbor's fence at 4911 Essex and complies with the town code, which sets a limit of 6.5 feet in height for any fence that is beyond 39 feet from the face of the curb. Doug Lohmeyer, our building administrator, has also stated in his correspondence to the applicant that the fence post cannot be taller than 6.5 feet or 78 inches as measured from the lowest side of the fence, and that the finished side of the fence must face outward towards the neighbors. this proposed fence does comply with the town code, and I recommend that the council approve the revision to the fence permit.
Thank you. Will the applicant identify himself and identify whoever's accompanying him, and has the opportunity to either present something or comment on the report? Sir, Mr. Wade.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I think as a technical matter, Mimi Kress from Sandy Spring Builders, who is also at the meeting here today, is the applicant, but it is obviously our property, as the mayor knows and as the council knows. And so I'm happy to speak to this. This is pretty simple. We had a fence approved as part of the prior plan. It was a steel fence. Once we got in and started working on the property, we realized there were some other wooden fences that adjoined the property, and it would just be aesthetically more pleasing if we put in the wooden fence. We met with the neighbors to try to make sure they were comfortable with it, and to see if we could accommodate any of their concerns, if they had any. The Crashes expressed a preference to actually, they have an old fence there that I understand has been there for, I don't know, 40 or 50 years. That's somewhat in disrepair. We told them we'd be willing to take down that fence at our cost, and then put up this fence to replace it. And just as an accommodation, as you may know, they're quite experienced in life, shall we say, and so we thought it would be easier for us to try to deal with that. They also asked if we could replace the fence in the existing line that their existing fence was. So originally our plan was to stop the fence kind of at the side of the house. To accommodate their request, we agreed to bring the fence out a little bit further, closer to the road, to basically mirror what their existing fence was. So those are the reasons for the changes, and part of an effort to try to accommodate their preferences. Similarly, on the other side, we spoke with the other neighbors and about protecting a privet that is growing as a natural shield along that line, which we're happy to accommodate.
Thank you very much. And now I will entertain questions from the council, and I would like to make a request today that please limit your questions to the application at hand in the interest of time. So first, I will call on Council President Shaw for any questions or comments.
My only question is in looking at the plan we were given, and I'm sure everybody's got it in front of them. So where's the end of the fence? I thought it was a little back of the house, but now I'm hearing it's farther forward. I'm just trying to picture it.
Who are you questioning?
Well, I guess the applicant, Mimi.
Okay.
Mimi, at the drawing I have where it says 10 feet 6 inches.
I'm pulling up the drawing. So the fence was going to be actually further back towards the house, as Mr. Wade said, right? But where it is showing to now in the, keep scrolling down, Matt, or whoever's controlling, that blue section, the Crashes, Mr. Wade and Mrs. Crash met out there, and they wanted it to match where their fence currently went to, which is where it says the neighbor's existing fence. And Mr. Lohmeyer went out and measured and told us specifically, the furthest point that it could be, and we let Mrs. Crash know that. So that's, their fence currently comes that far out, and that's why she requested, since we were doing the fence, to extend it.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understood the drawings.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Zoighauser.
I don't have any questions. I just want to say how much I appreciate the description of quite experienced in life.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Peel. You have no questions? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Circo.
No questions. I'm glad that Doug was able to take a look at
Thank
things.
you. Councilmember Barr.
You're muted.
Thank you. He said no questions. Mr. Town Manager, has any resident or guest expressed an interest in?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, council, are you prepared to make a motion?
I move that we, the council approve the revision to the fence permit at 4911 Essex, and that the new fence follow all the items that were listed in the report from our building administrator.
4917.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry,
Mr. Town Attorney, is that motion legally and technically sufficient?
It is, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Wade and Madam Brodsky-Kress. We
I'll
will
reach out to you tomorrow, Mimi, and send you an updated permit.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. I will now turn the gavel over to our distinguished council president for the work session.
Okay, well, the first, there's basically three items on the work session, although I'm open to more, and I have a few announcements toward the end. The first item on the work session is a discussion of the Town Audit Committee. As you know, we're going through and writing descriptions for all of our committees. Robin and, well, I requested material from MML. One of the reasons they're an effective group for us to be with. And they sent me right away examples of audit committees in many different communities, Maryland and elsewhere. And Robin and I took a look at those and we drafted something. I sent it on to Ron, who put it in the format that apparently our new committee descriptions are going to be. And what you have before you with just probably a couple of technical changes is what we'd like the council to consider. The idea would be to put this description on the October agenda along with the approval of the committee members for the audit committee. The auditors are scheduled to start approximately the same day as our council meeting. So we want to make sure that we have our committee together and ready to go. Robin, did you want to add something to that?
No, that was a good description. Thank you.
So I guess the first question is, does anybody have questions? I could mention two technical corrections. I think Ron would probably say that the on voting is non-voting in the description.
Yes.
Is that right, Ron?
Yes.
And the other is, having made some other changes, we didn't take out one word that made sense before but doesn't make sense now, which is in the composition and appointment terms, in the second line, we say to the extent possible, the other members. And that's because there were changes. We took the committee, the council member out of the committee itself. So I would say that we need to delete the other.
I'm sorry, Marnie, did you say that on voting was
Non-voting.
Non-voting.
Marnie, just so I'm keeping track of it, you would like to delete the on establishment, at least one member should be appointed for 4 years, one for 3 years, one for 2 years? Is that right, or?
No,
Okay.
That describes, I think, the way Ron envisioned it. He did not think that a council member should be part of the committee. Robert and I were suggesting a council member should be a full-fledged part of the committee. So
Follow the MML guidance, I will say.
yeah, MML had some communities have the entire audit committee made up of council members. And I mean, there are about as many different versions of audit committees as you can imagine.
But I can see the potential conflict between, having a voting member on the audit committee and the council voting on the audit committee's report. So that's an obvious conflict.
So in terms of the changes, Matt Trollinger, so I'm looking at the paragraph on composition and appointment terms. In the second line, I would delete other.
Okay.
And then in the second paragraph, the council shall have one non-voting council liaison.
Right. Got it. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question, and I don't know this for, I guess, any of our committees. Maybe I didn't read it close enough, but are there term limits on these committees, or people can be appointed time after time? Have we talked about that?
Most of our committees seem to, we used to do limited terms, and we had, some people came up every year for reappointment. I think Jeffrey has tended to say we really don't need that. For the audit committee, we thought, Robin suggested this might be a good idea.
Right, it's because the audit committee really requires specialist skills, and someone new in the town could come in, and therefore we should take a look at the membership, and every 3 years is the idea.
Great, thank you.
All the committees have terms, they just don't have term limits.
Great, thank you.
I think it's hard for us to find volunteers. I think it would be, I thought we had gone away from the idea of putting actual limits into the code. We did set terms so that we could look at the composition of committees every, few years and also have an opportunity to vote on them, which we do. But the idea of having limits on the committees really cuts down the number of people that we make available for these committees. And something like the audit committee, I think that there might be some value in, some continuity there, because,
I'll stop you. There is no limit. They may be appointed for succeeding terms, is what it says in the language.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have it pulled up in front of me. I forgot to print it out. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. For those
as Franny noted, the town code was amended. Section 13.3 now states there are no limits on the number of terms that may be served on a town committee.
Oh, great. That's perfect. Thank you, Ron.
Sure.
You earn your salary every time.
All right.
So we don't vote on this tonight. Jeffrey thought we should talk this through tonight so that when it goes on the agenda, if there are any concerns about it, we can make adjustments before it goes on the agenda.
No, but Marnie, I'll note it's 5 o'clock.
Okay, yeah, I will. So Matt, I don't remember seeing the audit committee and the audit committee description on the draft agenda.
Okay, I'll make sure that that's on there.
That would be good. And Robin, you and I should talk about being in touch with our audit committee members to see if everybody would like to take on this. This is a greater level of responsibility than the audit committee has had in the past,
Right.
but it's very consistent with what other communities who have audit committees do.
Yes, certainly.
Ron has pointed out he has no clients with audit committees.
Really?
You have one now.
Ron, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that?
Well, state law mandates that you have an annual audit performed by a public accountant, and the results need to be submitted to the state. So that's probably why there aren't separate audit committees. The town of Somerset charter is somewhat unique in this instance because there is a charter provision that says you have a committee to look over the results of the independent auditor's review. So you've got a double layer of review. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. It's just more than what's required by law.
Great, thank you.
Well, speaking as somebody who used to work at the Government Accountability Office, everybody thinks it's a good idea to have auditors. And in fact, most places that have audit committees involve their audit committees in the selection of the auditors themselves rather than having it be strictly an internal town function. So is there anything else anybody wants to talk about on this item? If not, so we'll put this on the agenda. Robin, you and I should talk about approaching our current members
Yeah.
on this. And
Right.
then I'm ready to move on to the next item on the agenda, if that's okay. Which
Could I,
is,
just before we start, could I request that whatever document we're gonna go over, that Matt, if you could post it on the screen, I find it very helpful. Man, I have printed out some of the things we're planning to talk about, but I'm a little confused as between two of the marked versions, and I just want to make sure I'm on the right one. So if you could
Okay. Yep. Happy
Thanks
to do
for
that.
me, Franny.
anchor it in the middle of
well, I had that conversation with Ron too. So Ron actually went ahead and tried doing a couple of documents and gave some descriptions of what the different. I said, Ron, I just don't know how to follow this and read it, and I don't know what else will. So maybe what we should do is what Franny suggested, which is Matt will put it on the screen, and then Ron, if you could lead us through. Basically, my understanding is we're going to be taking a look at very quickly the work we did last time and saying whether we had any concerns or not, whether that reflects our agreements. Some things were moved into the document that's going to take a much longer time. So this, for example, the purpose of the building code, we moved that. I think we moved something about the boundary survey. So some of those got moved, but the remainder, if we agreed, is what Ron's going to check and see whether we're okay. He added one item because he found that we had nothing in our code that said we were allowed to have inspectors go on the property. So that's a new item on the list. And then we're going to move from there to the things we had not gotten to. Some of it's very simple because it's changing words or numbers back and forth, but some of it will require some conversation. So Matt, if you'll put it up on the screen, and Ron, if you'll lead off.
Sure.
Sure.
So,
And Matt, why don't we use the PDF document first, the one that
Got it.
shows the red lines.
okay.
So this PDF document shows in red what changes we've made to the text as a result of the consensus from the last work session. So we can just go through those quickly and make sure everybody is still in agreement with those edits. So first, with respect to section 112-1, the purpose, that's the paragraph that describes the purpose of the building regulations. And we decided at the last work session that we would not attempt to amend that at this time. So I've taken it out of this ordinance and moved it to the second ordinance that we will later consider.
Okay.
Because this ordinance is meant to be the things that are relatively simple to review without a lot of council discussion. And then once we get to the second ordinance, where there will be more council discussion, we could discuss the policy statement. And next, if you scroll down to the top, I'm sorry, the bottom of page 4, that's where Robin noted that the or and should have been and/or. So that was a typo that we've corrected. I believe everybody can see that in red line in the definition of lot, the bottom of page 4. And then the top of page 5, I believe Franny suggested we ought to clarify that the county permit has to be delivered to the clerk treasurer, just so it's clear in the code to whom that document should be delivered. The county permit has to be delivered to Matt before Matt will release the town permit. Okay, then next, there was discussion in section 112-5 about boundary surveys and whether we ought to relax the survey requirement for certain types of construction. And debate ensued on that issue. So this will be moved to the second ordinance as well. Then the top of page 5, again, edit made for any suggestion, just setting forth whom to deliver the county permit to, same thing. Okay, and then bottom of page 6, Robin pointed out that the conditions of a permit might involve trees on private property, so we should delete the word town where it was modifying trees.
Ron, I don't know if it matters, but there was the one about it looks like the portable toilet screening, which was removed from the code on page 6 and instead put on the standard permit conditions.
Yeah, sorry about that. I skipped one. So yeah, the middle of the page, the subparagraph D, shown in red, that was the language we were adding to clarify the portable toilet screening requirement. And as Franny suggested, that's the type of detail that is more appropriate for a resolution than code language. So we'll strike that provision in its entirety and put the portable toilet screening requirement in the list of standard conditions that was introduced as a resolution at the last council meeting and will be looked at again at the October council meeting.
Matt, was that on the agenda that you circulated?
I'll double check and make sure that we have adoption of that
Okay.
on
Okay.
the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
You already mentioned the trees there.
Yeah, and so I think that takes us to where we ended the last session. Let's see.
But you made a suggestion at the bottom of page 7 to add the requirement on inspection as H.
Yes.
We haven't talked about it yet, but that
Right.
was,
Yeah, so then this is not shown in this red line document. We have to switch to, let me see. Do you have it up on your screen, Matt?
Yes. Let's see. So now this is the one.
Yeah, so this is the Word version, which shows the current draft of the ordinance that if it were to be adopted, this is what it would look like. It wouldn't show the red lining of the things that we've eliminated from the first draft.
Can you just slow down for 1 second? I'm just looking at my printout. You just go back to the first section that's being proposed to be changed. I just want to see if I've printed out. I'm sorry to bother everybody. I'm trying to see which one I printed out. Okay, wait, whoa, stop.
this isn't the one we were just looking at. This is,
I know what this is. I just want to see whether this is the one I printed out or not. If it's going to the first
page.
The first page after the be it ordained part.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I did not print this one out. Okay, thank you.
All right, well, yeah, we only have to look at this one for a second.
Right, got it.
So Matt, if you could scroll down to that new subparagraph H, please.
Bottom of page 7, I think.
Oh, back a little bit, Matt. Oops,
It's not there.
it's not there. Okay.
What
I
section?
saw it in one document because I let me see. I got kind of confused with the documents too. Let's see if I can.
Exit.
How it reads is,
Where are you in the document, Marnie?
I don't know, I wrote this down from one of the documents on one of the
So
ones.
it might be that it is not included in the meeting package because this is something that I only added 2 days ago.
Oh,
It was pointed out at our last discussion in response to some resident comments about on-site inspection of construction projects. I went back and looked at the code to find where our code says the town has the right to on-site inspections of
We were
projects.
talking about- Okay, yeah. We were
And I
talking-
found it's lacking. It's actually not there. So I was proposing a new subparagraph H here
Okay,
that would say, and maybe I can
At such
share
times,
my screen.
okay,
it would be
all right.
better if you could show
Oh,
us the
sure.
paragraph up on the screen.
Yeah.
Here, I need to, there you go. You should be able to share now, Ron.
Okay.
Yeah, this came up at our council meeting.
That's right.
Yep, it did. I was so glad Ron looked and found we didn't have anything.
And I apologize. I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen. Share screen. There it is.
We're all learning.
Can you see my screen now?
No.
No,
Yeah.
All right. Share computer sound. Optimize screen sharing. I don't need to hit all any of that. Now you can see it.
now I can see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll just show you this email because it's simpler. This underlined text, bold underline with H, inspections, this is what I would propose to add. At such times during the course of the project as deemed necessary, the town and its designees shall have the right to on-premises inspection of construction to ensure compliance with the town code, the application, and plan submitted, and/or the town permit issued.
I think as deemed necessary is too subjective. Can you just say from time to time?
Sure.
I mean, you know, you don't want some residents saying, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. Yep.
What, can someone tell me what, who, the definition of designees? Or
So,
councilmen- or
In other
councilmen
words,
designees?
Doug,
But what
Doug
about,
and Wayne.
what about council members? Are we designees?
Not unless,
You could be, but in practice you won't be
Okay.
because yeah, it's going to be Matt, Wayne, or Doug.
Is there a way to make that clearer, or is that clear enough to everyone else?
Perhaps say inspectors rather than designees, so, you know.
I think you could say, and it's staff. I don't know if I would say designees. I mean, you don't want to have an open meeting problem with council
They're
members.
not, but Doug and Wayne aren't really staff.
I would say, just say the town. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know what designees are. We don't really use that as a
They
as
are
a term.
staff for the purposes of this section.
So yeah, I'll tell you why I use designees, and it's used in codes of some of my other clients, and it's because we rely on independent contractors to
Mhm.
conduct the inspections, and so we don't want to be faced with the argument by an applicant that an independent contractor is not allowed to enter their property because they are not an official of the town. So this code provides that we can designate who is
Right.
authorized by us to conduct the inspection.
Ron, I think that's a good concept. It's just not one that we use throughout the code in other places, and we rely on the town generally in a more general way to look at trees, to look at parkland, to look at all sorts of other enforcement issues. And I think if you get into and its designees here, you're looking for a situation where we make a formal announcement about who's going out to do inspections.
Gotcha.
You know, we
Okay.
don't even do that when we send our employees out to look at, you know, shrubbery that's growing over sidewalks. So
Right, okay.
I think it
You know,
would be better.
I can look at the, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can look at the tree ordinance and try and come up with comparative language and have
mean,
that ready.
Maybe
Right.
what we need instead is something on the permit itself that says, you know, the town has the ability to authorize employees or consultants to carry out, you know, inspection functions or something like that. I think the town is okay here.
Mhm.
we have a practice certainly in place of having both employees and consultants, and we might get into a situation where everybody is an employee, or we might get into a situation where everybody is a consultant, and it seems like we would want to be kind of fluid on that depending on what our management structure is, right? I mean, it might be that we only have one person and it's Matt, right? Or it might be we have 12 people. But when you get into designees, that's kind of a new concept.
Why,
Okay.
why can't we go with something as simple as authorized staff?
What about agents?
Yeah, instead of designees, say agents, that would be fine.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you go with authorized staff? It's much.
Because independent contractors are not staff.
Not staff.
They're not they couldn't be considered authorized staff?
I don't think so, because they're not members of staff because they're independent contractors, I would think.
What if you looked under our liability language, Ron? Because we have, you know, when we talk about like who the town is authorized to represent in lawsuits and so on. I don't know. I recognize you're trying to draft this to put this into this item for the next month's agenda. I think we kind of already have, I feel like we have broad language in the liability section of the code where we talk about the indemnity that the town provides for actions taken by the, you know, taken on behalf of the town. I thought that was, well, maybe that's only broad enough to cover the employees, and our idea was that the consultants had their own insurance, and so we didn't need to worry about them. I don't know. Do you recall?
Well, yeah, I don't recall with specificity there.
I
But
don't
here,
know.
we just wanted to
Yeah,
put something in the code to make it clear.
I would just say the town.
Okay, yeah. So here, I've amended it in real time.
You're getting rid of and its agents.
Yeah, oh, yeah, okay.
I would say from
Um,
time to time during the course of a project. Or instead of during the course of the project, I would say, well, during, basically we're talking about all of the time when an application and permit are open, right? We don't go on premises to inspect things after the permit's closed.
Why do you need from time to time? Why can't you just say during the course of the project?
You can do either one, but I was trying to get rid of when necessary. But during the course, well,
Can everybody see that?
what if you, don't we want this to come into effect at the time when an application is filed?
I think
Do you want
that's
this before the permit?
during the course of the project. The project's over when the permit's closed.
When do we want it to start? At the time when the application is filed, or at the time when the permit is granted?
Once construction starts, inspections aren't happening before construction.
I would say that
starts.
after the that means after the permit is granted. But don't we want our people to be able to go out and look at things before? And I mean, otherwise, how do they make their reports? Like, how does Doug make a report if he can't go out and look at it?
Does he go out to the site before he does a report for the council?
Matt, can I weigh in?
Doug is on the call, so Doug might
Oh,
be able
Doug, are
to
you there?
speak
I'm
to that.
sorry, Doug.
Yeah, typically I do like to go onto the site once something's
Right.
been submitted so I can look around. And also Tolbert needs to look at the
Yeah.
trees.
For sure, yeah. I think that works. Upon submission of an application and during the,
And why- instead of during and continuing through the course of the project, no? or during?
Well, I would say while a building permit is open.
Well, what if a permit expires
Right.
and they didn't renew it?
How about upon submission of an application and until the close? I don't know the correct terminology.
And until completion of construction?
It's more the closing of the permit, right?
Yeah.
What is
Unless they let it lapse and, unless they wrongly let it lapse and then don't, what if they just walk away?
It's
Just
kind
what
of good
if
having
you just
a
take the
thing.
time period out? The town shall have the right to on-premises inspection of construction.
Okay, yeah, I think that works.
To ensure compliance with the town code. Wait, can you show the rest of it? It's a little bit too big.
Say again?
Can you shrink it a little bit?
Oh.
The town shall have the right to on-premises inspection of construction to ensure compliance with the town code,
But
the
that,
application plan submitted and/or the town permit issued. I think that's good.
you think construction, Doug, does that really, what about before the construction starts, as he was saying, like with Tolbert? This seems too narrow.
Well, I think we need to be on site, especially if there's like an addition in the backyard that we need to look at.
It
I
seems
think
too
this
narrow.
works though. And to ensure compliance with the town code, the application and plan submitted and/or the town permit issued. Yeah.
Satisfied with that?
I'm-
It's really hard to do this.
What you could do, Ron, is you could say, you could make a reference to the building code chapter, maybe. You could say, under the terms of this section or something like that, but then that doesn't bring in trees.
Well, this arguably doesn't bring in trees anyway, so I was just thinking we
Yeah,
probably need to add this into 182 as well.
Yeah, I think so.
One other item, I believe that there's a warranty on the tree, so doesn't Tolbert have to go back and look at them a year after construction? Isn't that still the policy?
Good point.
Well, that should be covered by this because we've taken out the time limit.
Okay, but it's after we've technically released the building permit.
True, but I think our language is supposed to be general enough to cover compliance with the town code.
Okay.
I hope that's what we're trying to do anyway.
182.8. Okay. Yeah, I have to add it to 182.8 as well. Guess I could do it later. President Shaw, what do you want? You want to go ahead and do this now, or should I just add it later?
Do we have trees in this? I'm trying to look at 182. We do have trees as part of it.
I think we need to add the same sentence to the permit conditions section in chapter 182.
Ron, I think it would be good to take this out of this ordinance and just make sure you get it right and put it in the next one.
I thought we were satisfied with this, no?
Yeah, this isn't that controversial, is it?
All right, well then I think maybe we should just let Ron do the drafting and come back to explaining it to us later, because rather than putting you on the spot to do the drafting right now.
Talking about the tree section or this?
I'm just saying that I think that rather than putting the spotlight on Ron to do the drafting while we're in our work session, then we should allow him to do it offline and come back to us to show it to us.
We did do a draft, which he brought to us.
Well, and I've just added it, and I mean the good news is we're just arriving at an agreement for what should be in the introduced draft. After it's
Exactly.
introduced, it'll be laid over for a month, and then there'll be a hearing, so there'll be more time to review what's in the introduced draft if we want to.
All that good news, okay.
Yeah, no, but I just mean to say that you can cross-check it a little bit more easily, Ron, when you're not on the phone with us.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'll just put this in here right now for a place marker, and
Yeah.
I can
Perfect.
mess with the language a little bit later.
Mhm.
Okay,
All right, so then we're gonna pick up
we'll go
at
back.
112.9.
Yes,
Wait, in which one are we in now?
we're gonna go back to the PDF,
Okay,
and I can just stay on my screen if it's easier
that would
for
be
everybody.
great.
All right, so this may be too controversial for,
Wait a minute, this is the next one that we're talking about, Ron. Sorry. Pink, isn't it?
no, this is still the first draft. This is where we left off at the last work session.
I thought you were not putting, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were not putting, I thought we were talking about the first ordinance that basically had everything that we got through last time. And then there was going to be a second ordinance for this stuff. And I thought that the thing that we have been going through all along was the first batch.
Yes, that's correct. But at the last work session, we only got halfway through the first batch.
Okay.
So now we're gonna pick up with the second half.
Okay. I truly do not know which
And-
document I'm in then because,
And it may be more accurate to say we got through a third of the first draft. So we left off at the last work session with section 112-8. And so
okay,
now
well,
we'd pick up with 112-9.
but I'm looking at something that has 112-7 in it and it has red line language. And I had a question.
Okay, we can go back.
Sorry, I printed out two things from Matt's attachments and we're apparently not looking at either one of them. So I'm feeling a little bit thrown off, but I think I have a question on 112.6. 112.6, documents to accompany the application. Is that in this?
Yeah.
Okay, stop. I think I saw you pass it. Okay, 112.6. But I'm feeling very unsure about what the purpose of this. I guess we have time. But anyway, 112.6 here. Here, a copy of the Montgomery County. All right, this is where A here. An applicant may apply for a town, okay, stop. An applicant may apply for a town permit prior to the issuance of the county permit, but the town permit will not be issued until the county permit is delivered to the clerk treasurer. Okay. Right there, I wanted to talk about this. If an applicant, how is this gonna work? If an applicant applies for a town permit, goes to the county, has to make changes, gets their Montgomery County permit, we, the town, can't be responsible for checking to see if our materials are up to date. I don't want us to have to figure out whether or not the county permit is identical to the town permit. So I want to stop here and talk about this because I think that's too difficult for us. I want, before something comes in for us at a council meeting, I essentially want the applicant to be certifying that what the town is looking at that night when they're voting is identical to what the county has granted. I don't want the burden to be on the town of Somerset to figure it out. Like, let's say somebody goes, applies for the town permit, goes to the county, and the county says, okay, but you have to have some dry wells or something like that, and they don't come back to us to show the dry wells on what we have in front of us. How, I mean, that just creates work for us to be basically cross-checking that stuff. So I want the applicants to be able to submit their application to the town so that we can start working with them and tell them all the different things that they need to look out for. I understand that that's one of our goals, is to get involved sooner, but I'm worried that we're going to basically not have the final documents from the county in front of us when we get to a council meeting. And so I want to figure out how we make sure that doesn't happen. Does everybody understand what I'm concerned about?
Yes.
Okay. So how do we make sure that happens? An applicant puts in an application to the town, and how do we make sure that what we look at is actually what was approved by the county?
Don't we get the county permit? Doug, do you understand what we're talking about, and do you
I
have
don't
any?
want us to have to check that.
I don't quite follow it. What happens is they submit copies of the approved plans from the county to us. Then we do our review based on the county's approved plans. The only problem might be if they make a change and go back to the county and they don't tell us about it. But we're not looking at plans that are not approved prior by the county.
Okay, then what are we trying to solve for by saying an applicant may apply for a town permit prior to the issuance? I mean, all of the language we have in the code here says, you know, you can only apply to us once you have your county permit. And now we're introducing the possibility that people can apply earlier than that.
If I can jump in really quickly, I think this is in response to not maybe now I'm mixing up my months, but I believe it was at the August meeting where the people said, we've submitted it to the county. We've made a change based on your code in Somerset to push back our, I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically because our code is stricter than the county's code, when they submitted a preliminary site plan to Doug, he'd said, you need to change this to conform with the Somerset code, even though they had already gotten a county permit. So then they had to go back to the county to show that they were changing it to conform with the Somerset code. There was no chance that the county would not approve it because they were further away from being to the edge of what the county allows, if that makes sense. But we didn't want to hold them up from getting before you because they had to make a change at the county level. So I think this was so they could still have a hearing in Somerset, and you as the council could say, we grant permission for this once you've received the county permit that certifies that you've made this change.
Okay, I'm just worried that.
Can I try? Can I try this? Make a try to this one. There's been I guess at a lot of the council meetings, there's been discussion, or even prior to the meetings, that the plans have already been approved by the county, and now the town and the residents and the council want to make changes to it. So what I was initially suggesting was that we maybe follow the same practice that, say, Martin's Edition does, where they file simultaneously, and then we have input on the plans prior to the county issuing their permit, rather than doing all of our work after everything's been approved by the county, because that's a heavy burden on the applicant to go back to the county and have their plans revised. So what I was suggesting is maybe if we do a simultaneous review with the county like Martin's Edition does, versus at the end of the process like the town presently does.
So I understand
Ron
that.
maybe can.
Maybe what we
I mean, Ron's familiar with that process too.
Maybe what we need to talk about then is if we're going to allow a simultaneous filing, then the Somerset Town Council should really only be looking at the building permit application for the few places where we have our own layers of regulation. And the only thing that concerns me is if the council, if the county requires changes to the building permit, we're just going to have to look at it again. So I don't know. I just think I'm not in favor of adding this language right now until we have a better understanding of how this works in practice.
I think that Chevy Chase View also does it this way, and what it does is it allows them to let the applicant know better what the differences are between the town and the county code, so they're more helpful to the applicant, but it's not like they fully apply right away, but there's just more contact.
So how does that play out then? The applicant comes into the town with a town permit and nothing goes to the town council until the application is considered complete. So there's no role for the town council until much farther down the line. And basically you're putting a lot more burden on the town staff up front to say whether or not a permit is going to be able to get through. And it concerns me a little bit that I'm sorry that I'm not being more articulate about my objection here, but I think I do understand what the goal was, but I think this is going to double the work for the council. Because I think we may find ourselves with situations where an applicant comes into the town with an essentially incomplete application. The town manager and the staff try to give them feedback with respect to certain Somerset unique aspects to the code, maybe.
Franny, could I allow you to rest your voice for a minute and raise a question, which is, how do you think the application would be incomplete, since we require a complete application to be submitted in order to get a permit?
The application would be incomplete because they wouldn't have been granted the Montgomery County building permit yet.
Well, that's not part of the application.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, that is a requirement under our code that an application is not considered to be complete until they have been granted a Montgomery County building permit. And we, the council, are only supposed to look at building permit applications that are complete.
Well, in that case, we do need to change that piece of it, don't we? Because if we're going to do simultaneous review, then it cannot possibly have the county permit when we're doing our review.
That's correct. There are a lot of things that go into a complete application. You can't have an application reviewed by the council without your pest inspection, things like that.
Read this section as saying the council is going to review it. It says an applicant may apply for a town permit, and there's a whole lot of stuff at the front end, all those forms that people fill out, that we don't see those until the very end of the process. So I'm not sure the council would be very involved with the initial application to the town.
Okay, so what would be the benefit to us for adding this language here?
I think there are benefits
The
to the
applications
applicant.
can be filed simultaneously so that early on in the process, through filing at the county level and at the town level, an applicant can be made aware of any shortcomings. Staff could let the applicant know, thank you, you've submitted this application, but you should be aware that our setback is stricter than the county, so this is going to be denied. So, before you spend months and months at the county level on these plans that we're going to reject, we're giving you this information now. But that's all happening at the staff level.
I was going to say, this
Matt-
sounds like it's doubling the staff work.
Matt wouldn't send the application on to the council until it's complete, and it's not going to be complete until the county permit is stamped and then submitted for the package. But we wanted people to be able to apply simultaneously, rather than going through a 6-month process at the county and then coming to the town for maybe another 2-month process.
Okay, I would suggest
may
that we
save
take
2
this
months,
out. Ron, let me let me ask you, as a drafting matter, I think this should not be included in our list of things that are basically a checklist for what is a complete building permit application. I think we should have this in a separate part of this, a separate part, because if what we're saying is, yes, you may submit your application earlier. However, your application will not be considered complete or reviewed by the town council until all of the things in section blank are provided.
Well,
I think,
Franny, whoa, wait a moment.
isn't
We're
that what
not
we're trying to
moving
do?
our process earlier if we require before council review that the Montgomery County permit already have been issued. We're still in the same trap that they are now far along in the process when the council first gets to look at it.
I know, but
So
okay,
in
Robin,
order to fix that, what we need to do is define the complete application without the approved permit from the county. We will not issue a town permit until they have the county permit. That's fine. But we've got to be able to look at it and review it and give contingent approval for a permit pending the.
I don't agree, Robin, because I think what you're doing then is you're requiring the council to review building permit applications twice. You're requiring them to look at them once before the county has signed off on them. And then you're requiring the council to understand the differences that may exist between the permit that's actually approved by the county and the permit that the council has already reviewed once.
There is a danger of that, but what I'd suggest is that we have this process happen, and if it comes up that way, we then fix the code at that point. But you're offering a contingency which hasn't happened yet, and we need to know the frequency with which it happens and whether it is a concern.
Okay.
Maybe
Well,
we just move this to the second ordinance because it's going to entail more council deliberation.
I guess I'd not just council deliberation, but I guess I would like Matt and Doug to map out how this actually works at the staff level and think about how it might work and how it might not work and what the pros and cons are, whether there's any benefit.
I can write up
Maybe-
the timetable and send it over to Ron.
I'd like to add just a few thoughts too, if I can here, just before we move on, just for people to cogitate on a bit. One of the things I've heard in previous council meetings and building permit applications is frustrations by neighbors and other residents that they didn't really get a chance to see what the plans were. So I think there's an advantage in just being open up front and having the plans available. So if an application is submitted earlier prior to the county approval, just gives more people more time, more opportunity to take a look at what's being proposed.
I think that's a good point. I think it just means that we're going to have to be just so diligent in terms of showing people when things change. And I think, you know, up to now that burden has been on the applicant, and the applicant controls all of those documents, and we have, you know, the burden on the applicant to provide the copies and everything like that. I think, like I said, I understand the idea of having a simultaneous filing, but I think it should not be included in the list of documents, first of all. And secondly, I think we need to add language that basically requires the applicant to certify. Well, no, maybe we don't need to do that if what we're looking at is the same concept of a complete building up permit when it comes to the council finally. But again, all of this stuff is going to be handled by the staff long before the council gets to look at it. So to the extent that the town residents are looking at it, it's happening before the council has reviewed it and before it's considered complete. So I think there's some real, you know, quicksand here, and I think it would be worth it really for us to map out how this works.
I think what Ron was saying is correct. We should postpone this discussion, you know, for a future meeting.
fine.
Can
That's
I
why-
make, can I
why
make a
flag it.
suggestion here that, I mean, there've been some things that have been said that should happen. I think it might be good to have a couple of case studies from other municipalities where this process is in place to show how, what the benefits are and what any issues are. The other thing I would point out is, building on, I think, Steve's comment, is with some building permits, we might have better outcomes regarding trees if people were not already at the end of the process when they file with the town. It's awfully hard for people to change once they've got their county permit.
Right.
Okay. Well, that was a robust discussion. So Ron, do you want to take us to?
Yeah, we
Fran,
can go
do you
back.
have any-
Go
Fran,
back
do you
to-
have anything else before?
Can I jump in real quick? Doug, do you mind? I'm sorry. I know this will be a little burdensome for you, but can you mute yourself when you're not speaking, because I think we're getting an echo from you.
Sure.
Thank you.
I thought it was me.
I think it's you too, Barbara. I still hear it.
Yeah, I still hear it.
There, I just muted Doug, so I think.
I was just kidding, Barbara. I didn't really think it was you.
Darn.
All right. So yeah, Franny, do you have any more comments before we move to?
Before you get muted?
Wouldn't be surprised if you mute me for the rest of the time.
No way, Franny, no way.
I don't, although I have to admit that I'm still really baffled about what document we're looking at. So I'm feeling very, very uncertain about all this.
have
Yeah,
one that looks
really,
like this.
there's only one document you need to look at, and that is the PDF, which has the red line changes
I
that
have
we've
two
already
different
gone
things.
through.
I know, but unfortunately, there were two different things with red line changes.
No, isn't there just one?
I printed out two different documents. I don't know.
See,
Well, we can use my screen.
Thank
one
you.
one is blue, one has blue and red. And then the last one has blue. So only one has red.
I understand. I'm just saying I printed out two different things with changes, and so I do have. I'm looking at section 112.8 action on a permit, and I did have a question on 112.8 E E1D. 112.8, but maybe we're on 112.8 E. 112.8.
I don't have 112.8.
Well, that's the thing. I'm looking at,
Permit conditions, 112.
no, 112.8, action on a permit.
Are you on?
You might be on the second.
You might be on the one that is the longer discussion document,
Yeah.
which is what we're not. You're on number 9-20, which is the one that Ron has suggested is for longer discussion, which is not the one that we're discussing right now.
Okay, fair enough. I will hold off on that then.
Okay, so 112-9 on my screen. This one is probably too controversial to include in this initial draft, but this section was really the impetus for this entire project. So, one thing we've noted is currently this section provides that when the council reviews a permit, it's to review all these things, A through F. And it says the council shall review these things. So it's mandatory. And I've suggested that the council may want to limit its mandatory review to the things that the council actually wants to review, wants to pay experts to help it review, and things that are related to substantive requirements in the code. So for example, one thing that is in the code now and that I'm not proposing to delete now is subsection D, whether the work complies with county, state, and federal laws. That's a huge burden for you to conduct a mandatory review to confirm compliance with county, state, and federal laws. And, that's probably something that's broader than you may want to impose the burden on yourself for. But, I'm not suggesting that be deleted now. E and F are the ones that have presented issues for the town council in the past because, in my opinion, this may create unreasonable expectations for residents or for those who may oppose a permit application. Let's say, for example, a permit application complies with all substantive requirements of the code. The new house complies with the setbacks that are imposed by the code, but a neighbor thinks the house is too big and it's going to block their sunlight. Then they may point to this subparagraph E, which says the work interferes with their enjoyment of their property. And so, then you've set up a situation where is that something that you can legally deny a permit application for? And we don't want to be in that situation. And so I think the better approach would be to include in the code those substantive regulations that you actually want to regulate. And if blocking sunlight is an issue, then you can have a height regulation, rather than a subjective regulation that folks could rely on different interpretations to ask you to enforce. But if you just have objective criteria like a height requirement of 35 feet, then we won't get into situations where the neighbors are arguing that we are not properly applying the code criteria. I say this is potentially controversial because I understand that these are very important provisions for some folks in the town, and they may not want to see them deleted unless there's something to replace them. So, it may be that you set these two aside until the task force completes its review and, makes any recommendations for code amendments that may include new substantive requirements. But, in the interim, the problem remains as to, what quiet enjoyment means that the council may actually consider in a permit review.
I would just like to note that at the last meeting, I think Doug included in his report that there were 4 homes that were coming towards us that he already knows of. So in listening to Ron, I would like to make the changes.
I would too, although I doubt that these would be in effect in time for those, but based on the difficulties we've had and with the expectations, and I really think things need to be in the code clearly so that we've got something to hang our hat on. So I would be okay taking these out.
I would too.
I mean, enjoyment is probably the wrong word. Yeah, but consider what happened last week, which was we had this 4.5 inches of rainfall in the town. And a lot of people had wet basements courtesy of not just their immediate neighbors, but other people up the hill. And I saw one awful picture where their person's yard was under 3 feet of water. That's interfering with the enjoyment of their property right there. And
But only if it's a building permit.
well, I understand, but the question is, you could argue that we were wrong to have given approval for other buildings because it led to that.
There can be flooding caused by properties that have not been renovated or that are not subject to building permits.
Yes.
There was flooding in my next door's
My
neighbor house.
example is not perfect, it's true. But what I'm saying is that there are things that happen in the town, and it's not always the case that an objective physical criterion can be built to capture those things.
I think I would I would say too that, I mean, the last time we did any work on our property was over 10 years ago. If there was flooding between my property and my neighbor's property, I would expect to handle that between neighbors.
It's sometimes not the immediate neighbor.
Of course, it's sometimes not the immediate neighbor. I'm suggesting that there may not be a role for the town council.
The role for the town council is presumably to protect the well-being of the residents. And so we need to write a code that captures that concept as specifically as we can in the code. Enjoyment, I don't think is necessarily the right word, but we've got to think about something that reflects what happens when things go wrong. And they went wrong last Thursday.
Yeah, I think as Tolbert has noted, none of these homes really were supposed to be here. This is supposed to be a forest. So it's not, it's all of the homes, Robin. It's all the development. It's not just the bigger homes, it's the smaller homes that don't hold the water onto their property. I think Kathy Carr's idea of working with the Rainscape program is about as good as it gets, so that they can do an aerial study of where the water's coming from.
I think we can do better than that, but it's not. That's not today. That discussion
is not today. But this, I think having stricter guidelines that are easy to understand in our code will make for a less divisive community. And I urge us to adopt this, because we have before you were on the council, we were really struggling as a community in going through some of the newer homes that were coming to us. And it was getting, it completely divided many people in the neighborhood. And the council was struggling because of things like this. It's just not clear. So let's make it easier for us as a council to tell the community where we are, what we stand for, and where we're headed. And I think it's, where we have the stormwater committee that hopefully will get started soon. But for now, we need to be guided by the code, and the code needs to be clear.
I don't disagree with any of that. I don't. What I was trying to say is that we probably can't make a code that is going to solve all problems for us.
I agree with you there, Robin.
I do too. I do too. Wholeheartedly.
But I think it would be great if we could figure out a way to get that message out, just as a general matter, because the rain problems that we had last week, from my point of view, are not things where the council should reach in and try to solve problems. I mean, I think it's just a community commitment. And when we only reach in when building permits are brought to us, then what ends up happening if people focus only on the building permits is that we put this negative pressure on new developers or on people who are renovating their houses, which to my mind is unfair. And there are a lot of old houses in this neighborhood that still do not have any stormwater management on their property because they've never been required to do anything in terms of landscaping or management. And there is no role for the council in that. That's a community message. And I think I agree with you that the code does not solve everything.
Right.
So I'm glad
please be aware, I'm not distinguishing between new and old houses. I really am not. But what I'm saying, and what I'm specifically saying about our code, is that no matter how good we make it, it's not going to be enough. I think we all agree on that. We should make the effort to make it as clear as possible, but that's all we can do.
Well, but there may be really constructive things we can do going forward in terms of, supporting people who want to make changes to their property.
I think there
toward
are
these goals, and maybe that's how we focus our efforts.
I agree with you that there is more than the code that we can do. Yes.
All right. So,
if I could,
do we have consensus to leave this?
Steve wants to talk.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
yeah, I think everyone's made some good points, and I would certainly like to see our specific regulations made a bit more objective in terms of what we want to maintain the community of Somerset. But until we're ready to add that code language, I personally am against removing paragraphs E and F. At this point, they're the only stakes in the ground that give the council some flexibility to exercise good judgment in the protection of our community.
Steve, I mean, except I don't think they really do, because there's nothing that's objective that we can turn to in those two items for our building permits.
I wholeheartedly agree.
I mean, I'm sympathetic to, and we haven't finished, I mean, the purpose section we took out of this document because we couldn't reach any agreement on what the purpose of the building code was. So that we still have the language around enjoyment and stuff in that one. But I think in terms of criteria for the permit decisions, it's just, it's setting us up for some really difficult and not very productive discussions with our residents.
And also, as Ron has pointed out, these concepts come into play when people come to us for waivers or variances. And so when you are looking at a building permit application that is outside of the objective lines, there are, you know, considerations that are comparable to this language. It's not the exact same language, but we do have a section in the code that does give the council the specific hook into an application that's asking for, you know, asking to build outside of our, you know, sort of expectations. And so it's not that completely, by taking these two sections out of the criteria for permit decisions, it doesn't leave people with no stakes at all. What we still have in the code are the criteria that come into play when people come and ask for essentially special treatment. At least that's how I see it.
I agree.
Well, I can envision people wanting to build new houses with some strange, unusual aspects that would not violate the code, but would seriously impinge. And I'm not talking about stormwater. I mean, that's one issue. But we recently had a neighbor talking about issues with a chimney. There are very few limitations on chimneys. But what if if a person wanted to open up a house and they want to be a semi-professional chef and basically establish a butcher shop in their backyard and have 6 chimneys, all of which are less than the 2x4 foot or whatever is allowed by the county. And it's not actually a business, it's just their hobby. So they're not violating any constraints, but they're just putting out a lot of noxious fumes. I would think we should be able to address that. And that's just one idea.
That'd be a county issue, Ron?
What?
I mean, in an example like that, wouldn't that be a situation where you would turn to the Montgomery County for regulation of something like that? I mean, I guess, I mean, every example, I mean, I think that is a good example to give because it's, you know, sort of would show a situation where the neighbors might say, this is, you know, this is crazy. Nobody expected you to do this with your piece of residential property within this zoning category. It seems to me that that would be a county issue, but in any event.
Yeah, the use of the property would be a county issue. You know, the physical aspects of the construction would be something that you have the opportunity to regulate if you wish.
Okay.
So anyhow, I strongly feel we should keep these paragraphs E and F in until we have something to replace them. The one exception, I'd be willing to remove the enjoyment of their property perhaps because that is very, very subjective, but I'd rather take a holistic approach and just maybe put this off to another discussion and then address it later.
I mean, Marnie, you're our council president. When 3 council members feel one way and 2 feel another, might you advise us as council president?
Well, I think at this point, what we're trying to do is come up with a consensus document for the first thing we're taking to the actual council meeting. So we've moved things that where we couldn't reach agreement to a second document where we'll talk further. And so I think the second document may be one where we won't have complete agreement among the council, and that will happen during the voting. I think it's probably better to do just what we've been doing in the past, which is move something where we can't get agreement to the second document.
Okay, yeah, we will move 112-9 to the second draft.
Well,
And-
it's just, yeah, okay, right.
And I'll just let everybody know, I don't know how long you wanted to go tonight, but I do have to get off at around 6:55 because I'll be joining a Chevy Chase View meeting.
Okay, so
All right.
the plan is to end this discussion wherever we are at 6:30 and turn to our last topic. And you can get out, you can scoot out of here after you've made your contributions on the last topic, okay?
Perfect. Okay, so section 112-10. This is an amendment to conform the code to current practice. I mean, right now, the code says you have to write a decision on every single permit application. But here I would propose amending it to say we're only going to write a decision if an objection is raised, because we only need a written decision if there's an appeal.
So Ron is saving us money, basically.
But wait a minute. Isn't it that, I thought years ago when Norman was our town attorney, he was going to develop a boilerplate decision so they could just be filled in so it wouldn't cost a lot of legal fees. But isn't there a great value to have written decisions in terms of legislative, whatever they call it, legal history?
Well,
So I'm
yeah,
not sure that that's a good idea.
yeah, I have a conflict of interest because I'd be happy to write a decision for every single permit application.
I understand, but
No,
in terms of
but
good
you have the
government,
physical
Right.
permit itself to document the decision.
but I don't know. There was a reason why Norman recommended that we have written decisions.
Right. We
So
have,
can you address that?
Well, a written decision is mandatory in the event of an appeal. I'm sorry, I don't know why prior counsel may have suggested you needed a written decision when there's no opposition,
And-
no chance of an appeal.
right,
It's very uncommon, in my opinion, to do that. I mean, most towns just rely on the meeting minutes to reflect there was a motion to approve the permit and a permit was issued. And then the permit document is evidence of the decision, and the plans are kept in the permit file as well.
and
So you
the
have the
meeting
permit
minutes, right, and the meeting minutes are evidence of the decision as well. That is written evidence.
But the minutes don't have, the minutes are not required to have the detail that might be needed for a future council to
But we're
use
recording.
to
We have a recording. We have a recording of the deliberations.
Well, and
I'm just saying that I
and
think
Mr. Mayor, I did draft templates that were aimed at being very easy to fill
Right.
out after every permit. But I mean, even that presents an additional administrative burden because, someone has to draft it. It doesn't have to be me. Matt or Doug could do it, but then it's got to go back to the council for approval.
Okay, so what do other, this is just, this is an academic discussion. This doesn't reflect, this isn't, don't other municipalities have written decisions?
No, they have written variance decisions, but none of my other clients issue written decisions on permit approvals or denials.
Right.
So can we agree?
Because
that-
they're approved mostly at the staff level, not after a hearing.
Okay.
So can we agree on this language? Is this okay?
It's okay with me.
Okay with me.
Yep.
All right, Ron, moving on. We're on item
Hey.
C.
So yeah, our code says that someone has the right to appeal the decision of the town to the circuit court. It's actually called a petition for judicial review. It's not really an appeal by law, so I'm just correcting the terminology there.
Right.
And then, it's nice to say as amended or replaced wherever we refer to another law, so that someone doesn't make the argument that we intended to apply only the law that was in place at the time we adopted our code.
You've done that in a couple of different places.
Yes.
This is a place, I think this is excellent to do that, because a lot of people don't understand, a lot of our residents do not understand this quote unquote appeal, because as Ron has told us before, the appeal is not based on the judgment that the council made. It's only based on the process. Isn't that right?
So
The
when
court's
the,
not going to look at,
No.
the court is not going to second guess the judgment that the council made based on the law. They're only going to look at whether the process was followed correctly. Isn't that right?
yes, yeah, on petition for judicial review, the court gives a very strong deference to the administrative agency below, and is not going to second guess
It's the fun-
findings of fact,
Yeah,
and will just review conclusions of law.
right.
But an example of the problem with this is that the Essex Avenue application that was on the agenda today, after that decision was made, there were some residents who are not lawyers that wrote a lot of crap on listservs about appeal, and they were going to get funds together to appeal it. And so I think that this is something that we need to communicate when this change is made, that we need to communicate that information to the residents so they know. Because some people are going to think that the reason why the council is trying to change this is to eliminate an appeal,
Ah, okay.
which they didn't understand in the first place.
Gotcha.
So that's why all this stuff, even though we might think that these are just like technical changes, there's a lot of people that are going to want to understand and think that there is some kind of motivation behind them.
Right, some dark
An
motive.
example, yeah.
Yeah,
This is an example of why the changes that the council wants to make need to be very clearly communicated.
yeah, I was just thinking maybe I need to add a comment here saying that we're just correcting the terminology, that according to the Maryland rules.
Well, Ron, if you want, I mean, Marty, I don't know if you want this or not, but I'd be willing to work with you on an article for the journal about once we propose this to.
That would be good. That would be good, Franny.
fine.
I don't think we're going to be ready to propose anything at the next meeting.
Okay, when the
um,
time comes.
Yeah, that's a great, yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so the next section, 112.14, as it was set up, I found it a little awkward because it said, this section only applies to new building construction. And then there's a definition of new building construction, which means new building or an addition. And I think all of that's unnecessary, and we can just relabel it as building requirements and say, here are the requirements for a building. And when someone's doing construction, they're going to need a permit, and then the setbacks apply. We really don't need to say the permit requirements apply to new building construction.
You're putting yourself out of business, Ron. Why would you make it so simple?
Okay, and then in subparagraph C, Doug had a clarifying edit. So just to confirm that when he's doing his final wall check, he's going to be measuring the setback from the final face of the building walls. What happens sometimes is when surveyors or the architects draw up plans, they may be measuring setbacks from where they think the wall is going to be, but then after you put on the siding or the brick, it's actually closer to the setback than anticipated. So, you know, this confirms we're not going to accept those types of mistakes. Folks need to take into consideration where the actual wall is going to be in terms of our setback.
Does this limit Doug's ability to measure things in the field before the final facing is put on, though?
No, because he can, the plans will reflect what kind of siding is going on there, and Doug can guesstimate the width. Is that right, Doug?
Doug shouldn't have to guesstimate it, though. I mean, that should be coming from the builder, I would think.
Well, I'll let Doug answer that.
Am I back on?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It's difficult for me to measure because I don't really know where the property line is. So this is mostly referring to when we get the wall check, that the wall check will be to the finished face of the wall versus maybe a poured concrete wall that might have a brick facade on it later that I have to anticipate. So what it's saying is your wall check is not valid until the wall is finished, to make sure that they're giving us the dimension to the finished wall and not to the subwall.
I understand that, but Doug, just to back up, why don't you know where the property line is? Are those not
Well,
marked?
I don't know where the property line is. A lot of
Why are
times I don't
those
know where
not
the property line is.
Why are those not marked?
So when lots are
Property lines?
first developed, a surveyor will plant iron rods, but they're buried in the ground. And after time, you need a metal detector to find them. So I think Doug is saying he doesn't know where the actual boundary lines are until the applicant pays for their wall check survey and a surveyor comes out and finds those buried pins. And,
So
and
at that
And a lot
point,
of times there's but
don't we want that done before the final facing is on, though? Or I guess then the remedy is then if it's too close to the setback line, we then say you have to take this off. But at that point, they've already built the wall of the building. I don't know. I'm not sure if I have any objection to the language. I just want to make sure that Doug has the ability to measure it earlier as well, if needed.
Franny, it's not that they'll have built the wall, it's that the builder knows that we're measuring from the final face.
I know that.
So that the construction hasn't started, it's just a message to the builder, that's all, that's how we do it.
I know that, but then Doug was just explaining that the wall surveyor doesn't come out until it's time to measure the final face. And I'm wondering if that's,
well, that's
process, but maybe we don't care.
well, no, a boundary survey does have to be submitted with the application. That's
so-
in 112.5E.
Move the boundary survey to the next document, right?
We did, yeah, but it's there now. It's in the code now.
This section just complies with the wording that the county uses for their wall check,
Okay.
which is the finished face of the wall. So I was just trying to make it that we're consistent with the county, and it's clarified that we're not going to take something that's not finished
No, okay.
and
So I
try
guess
to calculate the difference.
what you're saying is final face doesn't necessarily mean as built, it means as planned. And I just wondered whether we should clarify that.
As constructed,
Or as planned, it sounds like.
Well,
well, no, because at that point, he's measuring at the wall check stage, he's measuring the as-built construction.
It is
Yeah,
as built. Okay.
You certainly do that, yes.
So should we say as constructed or as built? At to the end of that
As-
sentence.
Yes.
Who like, does you like built better or constructed better?
I like either one is fine. I'm just trying to make sure I understand where this happens in the timeline. Sounds like it happens at the end.
Correct.
Okay.
But at the beginning, when Doug is reviewing the plans, he's looking at a survey to see whether the setbacks are complied with. So at the application stage, the applicant is representing, I'm going to comply. And then at the wall check stage, Doug is confirming whether they actually comply.
Okay.
Right.
And sometimes we put into our building permits that we want that measured before things are finished. So I was just trying to find out whether we still want that flexibility or whether we're just going to wait until it's all finished. I don't have an opinion as to which is better.
Well, the county requires a wall check before they're able to close in the unit. So it is at the beginning of the project. So but not the very beginning. It's maybe a month into the project or 6 weeks. So it's before they put the roof on, before they close in anything, the county requires it.
But that may not be, in fact, the finished final face. That may just be the wall.
That might, at that point, that might just be the poured wall, but this tells them that you're giving us a wall check that's not to the finished surface, so we need more information.
Okay. I don't have any other questions about that.
Okay. And then you're just correcting some terminology. Instead of primary building, main building, just to follow what's more customary at the county level, they use main building. And as I've noted before, sometimes we express numbers in numerals and sometimes we do it in letters. And so I'm just trying to make that consistent throughout. And I've got, well, yeah, we can go for 2 more minutes. Okay, so.
Is it, I just wanted, I know this will probably get us off track, but I wanted to ask questions about the county code in number 1. This is at the top of page 10. Are we that far?
Yes.
Number 1. So does what this means, I'm not saying we're amending the county code here, but that porches can be 11 feet from the rear line?
So, yeah, is our rear setback 20 feet? Yes, so that's correct then, yep.
So, gosh, I didn't realize a porch could be that close. And the other question I had was.
And that's existing in the code now. We're not changing that.
No, I know we're not. I just wanted to acknowledge to myself that that's very close to a neighbor if it's only 11 feet from the rear lot line.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one I wondered about was under 3, where it says cornices and eaves may project 2 1/2 feet. So is the eave like the roof can come out an extra 2 1/2 feet into the set aside, which could be an 8-foot side to side. So it could be 5 1/2 feet from the neighbor's lot line.
Yeah, that's right. So typically setbacks are, well, not typically, setbacks are measured to the exterior face of walls. And then this code sets forth what additional projections can extend beyond that wall setback line. And so as you noted, yeah, the cornice and eaves are the part of the roof that sticks out beyond the face of the wall.
So this is the county code, is that correct?
Well, I can't tell you off the top of my head if all of these measurements are identical to the county code. I believe they are.
I think they are.
I guess what I would say is when people start thinking about changing the code, I would think those are 2 things we might want to think about, but not for this review. Because I find both of those to be kind of intrusive.
All right, well, it's 6:30.
Thank you, Marty.
Okay.
I apologize. We only got through 2.5 pages. I'm not as effective at running
Not your
meetings as
fault.
our mayor.
It's not your fault at all. Oh
My fault.
This is why the code takes us a
If
while
I
to
was,
do.
if I was apt as Jeffrey, we would have got through 5 pages. Would have moved things along better. But okay, so we'll move on to the,
Diversity. Well,
okay.
so just to summarize, so Ron, you will kind of fix up whatever more we've got fixed up, and next time we talk about the code, we'll pick up where we were. We'll make sure that the things that we changed people are comfortable with, and we'll try and, complete this section.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm still sharing my screen with you. 'Cause-
I can take it away from you.
Oh,
if
no,
you
no,
want.
that's okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, like people to see this. So
Just to
Marnie noted, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to remind people, one of the things I thought would be useful, since the town of Chevy Chase has actually gotten out ahead of, I think, some other municipalities, to have Ron talk a little bit about what they're doing.
Yeah, so the town of Chevy Chase established a special committee on racial and social justice. They've had 3 meetings so far, and I've got on my screen here minutes from one of their meetings, and the minutes of all their meetings are available on the town website. But the town council in that town tasked this committee to take a look at what things may be done at the town level with respect to social justice. And just one interesting thing that I noted in the minutes that I learned, at Chevy Chase Circle, there's a plaque honoring the founder of the Chevy Chase Land Company, who developed the Chevy Chase area. His name's Senator Francis Newlands. And as Mayor Slavin has noted in the past in our meetings, that you can look at covenants in the area and find some pretty repugnant things. And reading a write-up on Newlands by the Chevy Chase Historical Society, you learn that this fellow was pretty disgusting and tried to advocate for property not being sold to anyone who wasn't white, and some of that garbage showed up in the covenants that were later stricken by the courts. But one of the things that the town of Chevy Chase committee is looking at is getting that plaque addressed. And
I could just add, this was on the agenda for Chevy Chase Village to have a resolution. I presume they passed it on Monday night.
okay.
And they also have a street within Chevy Chase Village that's named after him.
That's right.
But it turns out streets are under the jurisdiction of Maryland National Park and Planning. And there are a number of streets around the county, and I don't know what they're going to do about that.
I believe, Marnie, there is a county program right now that is ongoing to identify all of the streets in Montgomery County that are named after
And the building.
like people, and to recommend or to replace, change their names.
And the buildings.
That's great.
And so Martin's Additions is meeting tomorrow night, and they're going to discuss what they might do as well. That's what I had to add. And I've spoken to Jeffrey about some other initiatives. I don't know if Jeffrey wanted to mention those now, or.
Could I just do a couple of other things before we move on to those? So I just wanted to finish up. So Chevy Chase Village has decided right now not to set up a committee. And I also talked with the mayor of Kensington, and later, let's see, within the week, they're going to be considering setting up a committee, but it's likely to be a little different from the town of Chevy Chase. They've talked to people there, but I guess the town of Chevy Chase committee is going to be more advisory to the council. And Kensington is thinking about a committee that would actually engage residents and do things. So it would be more proactive in the community. So I think there's it seems like some of our sister municipalities are just sort of at the beginning of trying to figure out what kinds of things they might do. So
Well,
that's
I
all.
think this was I believe this was Councilmember Barr's. I think he wanted to take the initiative.
Right, yes, it was. It came up in actually the first Zoom meeting I held, and the context is a number of town residents are spontaneously doing things themselves in one form or another, raising money or recommending reading lists, things like that. So the question was, what can the town do as a town to advance racial justice or advance diversity? That's really where the idea of a working group or a committee came from. And you know, you see some of the ideas there in the town of Chevy Chase. You know, it is, how do we select our police officers? How do we review their performance in regard to sensitivity areas is one of the areas that they're covering. But there are other things, certainly the old covenants. What did we have in Somerset ourselves that were restrictive? That's something the committee could get into. But beyond that, it's like, you know, sensitivity training for our staff. You know, is that something that should be required? And as you think about it, the issues grow bigger. We're all single-family zoned houses in the town. Would a committee like that suggest we should be open to rezoning some part of the town? Though there
We
are
don't have zoning authority, Robin.
But we could advocate for
that we
could
should be
advocate
open to it. Not that we should do it. We should be open to it. So there is quite a space for a committee like that to move in. Obviously, we, the council, would give some direction to them. I was talking with one of the residents, Carolyn Cooper. She was saying there should be town meetings that a committee could arrange to get input from town residents. And yes, that can be part of their mandate too. So that's why I brought it to the working group, really, to get reactions from the council on this.
And I'm sharing my screen again. Just might be helpful to point out, but you probably already know this. MML is compiling information to assist its members on this issue. And they've got a nice web page here with some links to what some other towns have done thus far. And there might be some good resources here for you.
All right, thank you.
MA also has a pretty robust website, but it's not.
Who's that, Marty? Who?
International City Managers Association, ICMA, also has a pretty robust website, but it's less Maryland focused. It's a national organization.
Well, I would like to suggest that in the same way Councilmember Circo developed and introduced the idea of the Stormwater Management Committee, that Councilmember Barr do the same kind of thing with this kind of committee, because there's so many different options. And so that's what I would suggest, because I'm not sure that the council is going to come up with something today, is going to form an idea today. I think it'd be better if Councilmember Barr comes up with something that you can chew on and debate and amend and enact.
I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, and certainly we're not going to do it at 20 to 7 at night. No, correct. Yes.
That would be great, Robin. Thank you.
Sure.
But I think there's a lot of support for this type of committee in the town. And also knowing that the county council, you know, passed a resolution or a new law that requires that there be a racial equity lens on every decision they make. I think that not only should the staff get sensitivity training, I think the town leadership should. And, you know, former Councilmember Pekar has recommended this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, which is sort of the rage all over the country right now. And, you know, this book was actually written by Councilmember Will Gerwando's wife's cousin. So I've talked to Will.
Only you would know that, Jeffrey.
What we might do is maybe I'm going to suggest that all of us read this book, and then we have a book club kind of meeting with and try to get the author to come and so I talked to Will about that this summer, and he likes the idea, and he might end up doing that with, you know, all the other municipal officials in the county. And he's the only Black elected official now that represents the whole county. And that might be something that the committee could I think the committee, just like all of our committees, have all these great ideas. Let them synthesize through them and make recommendations. When the Black Lives Matter movement emerged this summer, I got many suggestions from residents about things that we should do, like put up signs, paint streets, have banners, have a day where we recommend that all residents patronize Black-owned businesses. There's just, a zillion ideas. And I think that's why residents talk to Councilmember Barr at his Zoom session about, and there's been a lot of talk on all the different listservs about it. But I think that one thing that the council president wanted me to bring up today related to this is that, so 3 residents, is it time to talk about this now, Marnie?
This is perfect because Ron's still here.
Yeah, so yes. So I think you're all familiar with the little library that exists on Warwick Place. And the history of that is that years and years ago, when the little library organization was established, former council member Rick Kessler wanted the town to purchase one and erect it and have it be part of a town program. And there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm to take on yet another project. We have limited staff, we have a lot of things going on. So that idea sort of withered away. And then a few years later, probably 3 years ago, Cinzia Furlanetto on Dorset, grasped this idea, and she came to the town. And I guess there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for it, again, for the same legitimate reasons. And so what she did was she purchased the library herself and found a town resident which is the people that live next to the school, found a town resident to allow it to be placed on their property. And then it sort of became a nice public-private partnership, because I went over there and I thanked her, and we had a beautiful ceremony. And I think it's a very nice functioning private little library. And there are a lot of little libraries all around the area of Somerset. But in any case, and then what happened is during the summer, there was a woman in Minneapolis established an organization called, I think it's called Diverse Black Lives Matter, Diverse Little Libraries or something like that. But she didn't start an organization where she would get people to erect these libraries. She just started some kind of organization or a Twitter account where she offered to buy books related to the topic and give them to individuals if they would agree to establish a Black Lives Matter library, sort of an incentive. So 3 residents accepted this offer, and then I guess they wrote to Marnie, didn't they? I think they wrote to Marnie.
Yes, they did.
So, and then Marnie basically told them the history of it. And so then coincidentally, at the same time that letter came in, a new resident on Uppingham decided she wanted to have a project for her daughter to establish a little library. And I thought, so I thought, well, great, maybe she will be willing to dedicate it to Black Lives Matter, and I could put all these residents together. Well, I did put them together. We had a meeting. Matt was at the meeting. Linda was at the meeting. And it just seems that these three residents are very hell-bent on the idea that the library be on Somerset property and be sponsored or approved by the town. They just think it's very important for the same reasons that all these other residents had their own ideas about how the town could recognize Black Lives Matter with signs and with street namings and symbols and all this kind of stuff. But in the meantime, these residents basically are still making this specific request. So I talked to Ron about it, about what some of the options are. And one of the options could be that they request from the town a permit to erect. They're willing to pay. This wouldn't necessarily be a gift because they're willing to pay for the library and they're willing to maintain it. So I talked with Ron, and I'll let him elaborate on it, about the possibility that the residents apply to the town for a permit to erect the library for a certain amount of time, and that would require a renewal or whatever. And that way, perhaps all the everybody's needs would be addressed. And something else the council could do is decide to purchase the library and put it, add it into all the programs that we already have. The same way when the town was given the gift of the batting cage, and then it became a town function. So it's going to be up to the council to decide. But I thought that Ron could elaborate on the permit idea. But another thing that the council could do is say to the residents, we're in the process of establishing a Black Lives Matter, whatever you're going to call the committee, and that can be an idea that can be presented to the committee, and then recommendations could be, that's it. Then that could be an idea in the context of all the other ideas. But of course, a resident has the right to make a request. So that's where it stands.
So authority to permit. I mean, it seemed like with.
Well, if it's on town land, I think the suggestion was putting it on town land.
Right. Well, how would you all feel about making it with the project? It would just be the ongoing project of the town hall, and something that the kids could get involved in, and setting up the library, a diversity library at the town hall, that the town would buy the library, the town would buy the structure, right? The children of our town could find books that they feel would be appropriate for the library, but our maintenance staff would be responsible for maintaining the structure, but not the books. That would be something that the kids in the neighborhood could do. I mean, that's how I would like to see it myself. We have plenty of land at the town hall. It would take a very
the residents, they're asking that the Black Lives Matter library be placed near the entrance to the pool.
Although they might be willing, they're working with, I can't remember your new neighbor's name, Marnie, but they had also written to me about setting up a little coffee shop on the porch. So she's now, I hope, a part of this, and maybe she's not
a part of it.
Yeah, she reached out to them.
What's her name?
Oh my gosh, she has.
Spalacy? Is it not Megan Spalacy?
No.
So
it's
Daphne is the one. Daphne is the
one with the child.
She's willing to dedicate her private little library to Black Lives Matter, and they talk to her, but they are interested in having a library on town land that is sponsored by, they think it's important that it be sponsored by the town.
Yeah, and I think having it at the town hall then would be most on the town hall property, front and center, right on our front lawn. I think that would be appropriate.
Can I just, I mean, I don't really feel like I can raise an objection to the concept, but we do have a gift policy, and the reason we have a gift policy is to, I don't know.
But
I mean,
that's
we've talked about this in the past. Sounds to me like
this wouldn't be a gift as I see it. This would be
Well,
something
except
that we
that-
purchase,
except
Well, they are
If
willing
it's-
to make it as a gift, though.
but we
if-
wouldn't
except
take it
if
as a
it's
gift
put
because
on
of the gift policy. We wouldn't take it as a gift because we don't do that. That's why I said the town would purchase it. We would put it on town property. Our staff would maintain it just as we do the benches and
can we,
just donate the books.
isn't it, I guess maybe the question then becomes, you know, is there any role for the town in terms of reviewing the content of the books that are put into this library or not? Is there any expectation that anybody in the town is going to be looking to make sure that these books are consistent with the goals?
Well, they volunteer. The residents
just say,
volunteer to
if-
staff the library.
Can I just interrupt if Ron has anything he wants to add, because I know you need to leave in a minute or two.
Sure,
Any-
yeah, appreciate that. Just to add to what Mayor Slavin said, so you have several options, but the two options that we discussed are allowing private residents to operate the library on town property. And if that was done, I had recommended that we have some sort of agreement to evidence the rules to address things like what Councilmember Peel is noting, that the committee is going to promise to review the content in the library to make sure no prankster puts something objectionable in there, so on and so forth, and that they indemnify the town perhaps for their operation of the library. On the other hand, it could be a town project, and then we could not require any agreement, and then the town would undertake all those responsibilities. And it could be,
These are some of the objections that came up when we first talked about the Little Red Library, was how we see ourselves in terms of the books that are brought in, and do we have any obligation to go and check and make sure that the books are not generally inappropriate or hateful or something like that. And we talked about that at length, with the Little Red Library, the first one or two times it came up. And I wonder, and I haven't been tracking all of the proposals the way Jeffrey has, but I wonder if there would be, a concept that we might consider in terms of essentially making a donation to the Montgomery County Library of some, 20 books or something like that are recommended by a committee in the town, and that the town sponsors the purchase of those books and then donates them to the public library. Or anyway, just an idea where we could be supportive in a financial way in terms of buying the content that's recommended by the people who have put the time in to figure out some useful reading material, but not go down the path of essentially adding an obligation to what I would see being an obligation on the staff.
all right, well, I will say good night, folks.
Okay, thank
Night,
you.
Ron.
One problem, look, I love this idea and everything, but I also love about 20 other ideas. So to just pick this out and then say, okay, well, we've done Black Lives Matter, when some of the other suggestions that have been made are just as valid towards the goal.
Right.
Like I was trying to ask them, well, what is the goal that you're trying to achieve by having this library that, it's like a it's basically like it's just a symbol. Well, why is that the best symbol that Somerset is dedicated to the goals of the Black Lives Matter movement?
But what?
Why is it painting a street better? I don't know. But this is,
Have you heard other suggestions, or Robin, have you heard other suggestions during your sessions? I haven't heard any others.
I've heard many suggestions, and that's why I think it's better to have this in the context of the, but I don't want to say, I don't want to say that they came to me as if I was the king of England and could just say, yes, you can put it there, and now they're, they're putting it on me, but I was trying to explain to them the process and everything else. And I mean, just because you have, I think it's nice to have this symbolic Black Lives Matter library. Like we have the sign, we put a paper sign at the front of the town hall. It's not really authorized. We just put it up there, but there need to be some real thoughtful decisions made on how we're going to address this with symbols and hard work on the issue and everything else. So I don't know. It's up to the council to decide what route to go.
Doesn't sound to me like we can fully resolve this tonight. Does anybody have a suggestion about how we might give this enough attention moving forward?
But having said all that, I don't think there's anything wrong with they've made a request. Nobody else has made an official request regarding this topic. How bad would it be if they, what's the real cost of the town issuing a permit for them to put up a little library with all these concerns that all of you have about
I guess I'll tell you what I think.
And it would only be a permit, it would have to be reviewed after a year, but there'd be no obligation. There'd be no obligation if it blew away in a hurricane for the town to replace it. There'd be no obligation for the staff to do anything. That's
Jeffrey,
why Ron came up with that idea.
Let me ask what it would look like a year from now if it didn't go well and you took it out.
Well, they'd have to apply for renewal of the permit.
I'm just saying, like, if for some reason it didn't go well in terms of meeting the town's goals or in terms of working out as anticipated from a permit point of view, are you going to want to be in a situation where you then turn and say, we're taking out our Black Lives Matter library? I would worry about that too.
I have to say,
that's why it's so hard to decide.
Extraordinarily difficult times. This isn't like making a decision on the batting cage, or even when we talked about putting up the little library with Chinzia. This is different.
Okay.
Very, very, very different. And I myself feel that we should back it 100%. We should actively be involved in it. One or ones of us should make sure that the reading material is appropriate, because if we go down some little path, here we have Robin trying to set up a committee. And we can't even do this one little thing.
They volunteered.
I'm not against the concept. I'm just asking about how it works.
We will deal with those problems when they come up.
I just thought it was the right time to ask.
First of all, one of the things that came out of the meeting is they're willing to pay for it. They're willing to staff it. They're willing to maintain it. And I do think that they would accept the idea of getting a permit. But that hasn't been presented back to them.
I don't understand the purpose of the permit.
They want to use public land.
Control if we need to exert control. I hope we don't. But if it turns out that inappropriate books are in there or something like that, then we have control if there's a permit. We don't if there isn't a permit.
The permit means that it's the town. There's no obligation on the part of the town to do anything.
I feel like we're just caught in this bureaucratic jello, and we can't even figure out how to lift our feet out of it when there's there's this tremendously sensitive issue in the entire country. And we have three, not one, three residents coming to us, trying to open our eyes. And we're so stuck in the muck.
Well, you're not stuck in the muck if three of you want to put it on the agenda.
I'd be happy to put it on the agenda.
And Barbara, I fully support your point of view. I think that we should accept whatever the modest risk is that there'll be an issue. We should do this. We should support it. It should be the town supporting it. We should have it on town property. And if there's an issue, it's on town property, we inherently have the right at some point in the future to take it down. If people complain, if the complaints are valid, whatever, if it gets dilapidated, whatever.
Figure it out.
Let's approve it. Let's get it up.
So you just
I
put it
just
on
want
the
to be
agenda.
clear. I'm totally fine with doing it. I thought this was the right setting to ask the questions.
Yeah, good question.
And I don't want anybody to think that, I don't support the concept because I'm asking the questions. I want to make sure that I'm not.
Well,
sort of
the
somehow-
purpose of this work session was to figure out what exactly you want to put on the agenda as
I
the
haven't heard
action
a
item.
specific proposal yet to put on the agenda. If you would
I
have,
was-
if you had one, okay, let's talk about it.
I was going to suggest if whether it's me or if somebody on the council or the mayor reached out again to them and maybe asked the three residents who had brought it to our attention to maybe put together a formal proposal that talks about why they want to do it and what they're hoping to achieve. So we have also some context of this is why we're doing this. This is why it's important for us to be doing this. And this is why we want to support you. And this is the way we're now going to support you.
I think that's perfect.
And can we have that on the agenda then for next month?
You all decide. That's the purpose of the work session, decide what you want to put on the
I
agenda.
were in favor of it. Is there a third?
Yep, I'm fine.
Takes two anyhow.
We all want to put it on the agenda. We just want to know
So
what
are
it is.
you, before Matt goes back to them to get them to write, are you willing to pay for it, or do you want them to give it as a gift? Because they're willing to give it as a gift. Their main issue is that they want it on town land and they want it near the pool.
I want them to provide the books. I don't care about who pays for the
Well,
structure.
they're not providing, they're only providing these first
They have
books,
some starter books. Yeah, they do have starter books they're providing.
but they're also going to all these little libraries require a lot of monitoring.
I think by the pool means that there might be more vandalism, and I think it would be better to have it by the town hall.
You might need to raise that with them, Matt, since to see, whether they'd be willing to consider that.
Okay.
But it's up to the council to decide where it's placed. The council has to decide.
Did anyone ever, in any of your discussions with them, did anyone ever suggest that we're putting it at the town hall? Or would this be the first they've heard that?
I don't know that we specifically suggested that. I think we had sort of talked to them, about the reasons why they wanted it at the pool. And to them, it was a central sort of spot in town that they felt like got a lot of foot traffic. So that's why.
I don't think
Yeah,
they're interested in having it at the town hall.
Well, I'm sorry, what, Jeffrey?
I don't think they were interested in having it at the town hall.
Well, it'd be maybe, so Matt, you're going to raise that?
Yeah, I can. I'll talk to them and try to get their perspective on what.
I also think there's another issue about. I think that you have to join the little library organization. Too. We should find out about that. They didn't really know a lot of the details.
I mean, we just don't have, when you think about it, with the pool closing all winter, I would be worried somebody's just going to reach in and take all those books. I mean,
I know, but the most important thing is that it's a symbol. The library on Warwick, I monitor it almost every day.
Park or something. Put it by the climbing tree.
I monitor it almost every day, and it's not going to be
What's the little park on Dorset?
They're going to be disappointed ultimately, but it was very important to the three of them in terms of being a symbol of the town's commitment to the cause. That's really what it's all about.
What's the name of the little park on Dorset?
I'm sorry?
What's the name of the little slice park on Dorset with the climbing?
Founders Park.
Founders Park. Put it in Founders Park. At least
That
the
is a-
police officers would be going by.
Many. That's a really
Yeah, I
good
was thinking about
idea.
that too.
That's a good idea.
I like that.
I mean, the books are going to be stolen if they're in the woods.
Might I add, the two of the three are temporary residents. They're just here. I think they're both renters and they are on assignment and they're only going to be here. That's what they told us. And I can't say they were the most cooperative individuals.
Let's just, so it sounds like,
Right, Linda? Linda was at the
All
meeting.
right, Jeffrey.
Linda was at the meeting.
so let me just sort of wrap up this section since we're already over and I have like 2 minutes worth of things I'd like to do. So it sounds like Robin's going to work on a charter and Matt, you're going to be talking to the residents who are interested in the Black Lives Matter committee and we've just shared information. So is that the bottom line for this session? Part. Okay, so I think we need to pick a date for the October work session.
I'm gonna go
Sorry,
get.
Ron and Doug aren't here, so it'll have to be tentative. But I'm wondering whether it could be Tuesday the 13th. I think the Environment Committee meets on the 14th. Steve, do you know for sure?
Not sure.
Sorry, Marnie, I had to go get my calendar. What was the date you suggested?
Tuesday the 13th. It's the day after Columbus Day.
Yeah, I hope, it's not definite, but to be away that week.
That is when they have scheduled that evening. It's at 8 o'clock, but that's the evening that they had scheduled a panel discussion about leaf blowers.
Well, then we'll have to look at the following week. That doesn't work out as well with the agenda.
What about, you can't do Wednesday the 14th?
I'm not,
Barbara said she's going to be gone all
I
week.
hope to be gone. But that's fine. If the four of you can do it, that's totally okay. You know, you'll have a,
What about Monday the 19th?
That's fine with me.
Can you say that again?
You know, it's fine to do it then because if you're worried about something with the tentative agenda in the journal, there'll still be time to change something.
Can you say it again, Marnie?
I was looking at Monday the 19th from 5 to 7.
Okay.
We would have to make it tentative because of Ron and maybe Doug, because there are a lot of different, yes, Doug too, because based on yesterday's meeting with Jeffrey, some other things besides the code have come up. That includes taking a look at our building application format. Matt raised the question of what is it the council needs for reviewing applications and are we getting everything we need? So really taking a look at the documents. For example, I think maybe we need the date neighbors sign in case plans change and you know, that sort of, so I don't know. So that's one thing. Jeffrey wondered whether we would want to take a position on Thrive 2020 at our November meeting. And that would mean we need to spend a little time looking at that. This is a document the planning department has developed and is holding hearings on in November with the idea the county council will consider it next year. And it is a total rewrite of the county's zoning. And
But
I
Ron
think-
wouldn't be, Ron wouldn't, if Ron needed to go, he wouldn't need to be there for that. If Ron needed to go, he wouldn't need to be there for that. This idea was brought to us by our town manager, by the way.
The coordinating committee is going to be
I want to
talking
give
about
him
it
the credit.
in just a few minutes. So, so the code, whatever we can do on the code is will be back on the agenda. We might want to talk about the nonagenarians party if it doesn't get resolved before then. No.
No, you don't. There's no need to talk about that before all these other parties.
You know, we have another idea about it. So.
Okay. And then
Remember we have the idea. Remember the idea, Marty, we want to discuss. That won't take very long.
and then the coffee stand idea that's come up from some neighbors on Uppingham Street. So,
Arnie,
Hear
come-
you.
the coffee stand from
I'm
neighbors
not
on
sure you
Uppingham.
want to. There's a moratorium. I think the moratorium is going to be extended. I don't know that that's something to be worked on now.
Well, some of those are for sure things we're going to do. So let's tentatively look at the 19th. The other things I just wanted to mention quickly.
Marnie, do you want to have a second date in case that's not good for Ron? Like maybe Thursday, the 22nd or
I
not?
think
I could
that,
do that.
I think that is the Martin's Additions meeting. So
Yeah, Thursdays are never good for, yeah.
Let's hope it's the 19th, because in case there is anything that needs to be changed on the tentative agenda for the journal, there'll still be time.
I just wanted to mention beyond this that Linda sent out material on the MML Fall Legislative Conference today. So if you're interested in signing up, now's a good time. And it's a virtual conference, so you don't have to travel to get there.
I've registered already.
Good. And the MML meeting, our chapter meeting is tomorrow night. Everybody's on the mailing list, so you should have gotten a copy of that. That's a Zoom meeting. And the coordinating committee meets at 7:30 tonight. So Steve and I are moving on to another Zoom meeting fairly soon.
oh, you guys are troopers.
Yeah. Anything else for the good of the order?
What about Halloween? Are you all working on that?
We'll get back to you.
Okay.
I really appreciate everybody's attention. I know this isn't easy, but I think we're doing some good work together.
But Halloween is going to be on the October agenda. But we'll get back to you.
Great. Okay, thank you. I also, during this meeting, I got, maybe Matt or Fran can answer this quick. I got an email during this meeting. Someone wants to know if there's anything in the code that would, there are many empty houses around where I live. And this neighbor of mine just wrote to me and said, is there anything that would force someone to live in their home and not leave it just vacant? There's nothing.
Insurance. Insurers won't insure after a period of time if it's
Well,
vacant.
Their own personal problem. There's nothing in our code, correct?
No.
But if a house is, but one
No.
of the issues they're concerned about, if a house is abandoned and it's not taken care of, that's the county regulation.
They're having landscaping done, then
They're having everything done, everything, all of them are having
we have,
everything.
no
we have
requirement.
we have no hook in that.
There's no
Right,
requirement.
thank you.
There's nothing else. Thank you all.
Thank you, Marnie.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.